Hi friends, this is Caitlin. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm playing with this new Trinity stamps, a Waffle lot stamp set, and the coordinating stencil and die. And this is just like the sweetest, cutest little set. I thought this would be great. I think it launched technically for Valentine's Day, but I just thought it was so cute for like year-round card making and just like a good thinking of you kind of setup. So this is my first time buying from Trinity, and I really like the quality. And the stencil is just perfect. Like, it's small enough that it fits in the same packaging as the stamp, but you get everything you need, and I love that. I decided to do kind of a tone on tone background for this. So I'm building my own background. I inked up my white cardstock with a little bit of antique linen, and I'm going in with that same antique linen to stamp my little heart waffle in all different directions, just kind of building up my pattern background as I go. And I'm just hand stamping, which I don't do often, but this was pretty easy. I just like to make sure I leave my stamp on the paper for an extra couple seconds so that any of the ink that's on the stamp has time to transfer properly. And I like to make sure that some of my images really go off the edge of the paper. We're going to be trimming this panel down a good bit, but to start out, I just wanted to make sure that I had that illusion that this is cut from a bigger piece of pattern paper, and this is just like one little section. I do feel like that top one I'm stamping right now is a little higher or a little closer than it should be, but it's going to get trimmed away anyway, so it really doesn't matter. Now, to use this stencil, I used a full stick Post-it note to cover up the section I wasn't working with, so that top like shadow section. And I'm going in with tea dye ink, which is one that I almost never use, over the kind of waffle grid section of stencil. And this took a little bit of practice figuring out how I wanted this to look. I think because I decided to have my main stamped ink the lightest, it was a little less easy to use. When I use the same, all of the same products to make the main like featured waffles, I'm gonna make the actual waffle part darker, and it was so much easier to use my stencil that way. You can really see how everything lines up with the grid stencil when you can actually see the image that you stamped through it. But no regrets. I love the tone on tone look that I was able to get. And you can see I went back to re-ink some places here and there. I think having some sections looking a little more toasty than the others is a really fun look, and helped kind of get that texture to stand out and pop on the paper without having to make the main image darker. And I do think these look very much like waffles. So then I switched my full stick Post-it note. I just slid it down, and we're gonna go in with, I believe this is gathered twigs for the shadow part. Sorry guys, I'm still dealing with this little like leftover little baby cough. Again, this was a little harder to line up just because my lines were so light, but this gives such an amazing 3D look to this image. I was just like blown away at how cool it looks when you add this. So same thing, I'm just working my way around my cardstock and adding in that shadow. We are definitely like a waffle and pancake family, so I just know that this stamp set is going to get used regularly, and my kids are going to want to play with this for sure. There were a couple spots where my inking went over the edge of the stencil because I was only blocking off the two designs. I didn't think really about the edges, so I did go in with a little more antique linen and just kind of buff that out. It worked really well. They just kind of disappeared. And then I went in with a little bit of the tea dye ink watered down and splattered a little bit of that on the background. It kind of gave like a little syrupy feel to it. So that is our background, and it's just so soft and pretty. And I honestly think this, with just a sentiment, would also be super cute. But I did want to have two kind of featured waffles so I could give them their little faces. And so I stamped those out with the tea dye this time. And I am going to go back in and stamp them a second time. And normally I would never do that hand stamping, but these were really easy to line up. The lines are bold enough and the design is simple enough that it went together really well. So now I'm using the antique linen as my all over color. So I kind of flipped these two from my background. And I'm kind of trying to like darken them up a little bit, add a little extra shading. And this was where I decided, I guess not yet. I went in and added my shadow this time with gathered twigs, which is the same as we did the first time. And it pops, but I think the 3D effect is even better on those lighter waffles. So I'm not really sure if there's like a right or wrong way, probably not, to use these, but they were just so cute. So this is where I decided that I needed to make those stamped lines a little bit bolder, and I'm gonna go in with more of that tea dye and stamp them a second time. I used the coordinating die to cut both of those little hearts out. And then I die cut the face, the little face dies twice from black cardstock. And I am going to heat emboss a really cute, I love this sentiment, you're waffly cute. And I wanted, you can see that hot pink gingham over on the side. That's the pattern paper I landed on. I wanted something that kind of gave like a raspberry jelly, raspberry jam kind of feel. And I thought that the kind of raspberry pink color would be really pretty with all of the tan. So to match that pattern paper, I grabbed the Sangria glitter embossing powder from Pink and Maine. And this is so pretty. It's pink, but it has flecks of blue and purple and pink glitter in it. So it just has a really fun kind of iridescent hot pink look. So I am melting down my powder. Of course, I treated my cardstock with anti-static powder tool first. And then once everything was melted nice and smooth, we're going to use the coordinating die to trim it out. But you can see, you get that like really fun shine plus the glitter. But this is such a bold sentiment. It's really easy to read, which I like, because sometimes my glitter embossing powders don't work the best on smaller sentiments. They make it really difficult to read. So now I'm trimming down all of my panels. This one right now is getting trimmed to 5 by 3 3/4, and it wasn't quite small enough. So I'm actually going to go 3.5 by 4 3/4, which I know is cutting away a good bit. But I just really wanted to be able to see some of that gingham. And once it was trimmed down, I went back in with a little more of that tea dye on a foam blender just around the edges to kind of give a little bit of like a vignette look. I think it grounds it really well and helps it hold up next to that bold pattern paper that's going to be framed around it. I added my Tombow mono adhesive to the back of my waffle panel, and I got that lined up, and I think that this pattern paper just lined up so perfectly where you get that like double boxed edge the whole way around. That was not intentional, it was just lucky. And I'm adding my little freestanding waffles. I'm adding those directly to my inked background with that same adhesive runner, but I'm gonna pop up my sentiment with foam. So that was kind of the compromise. I really wanted to pop up everything with foam, but I was worried that would be a little excessive. So I trimmed out one tiny little piece to make sure that that Y doesn't get bent or weird in the mail. And I had just been holding that in place to make sure my waffles, stuck out enough. And before I press down on that foam, I'm going to go in with my T-square and make sure that my sentiment is decently level. It doesn't have to be perfect, but pretty close. And then I added the little face pieces to my waffles. I really wanted to make sure that the waffles were in the correct placement first, so that I could kind of have these looking like they're looking at each other without it being like over the top. Like I didn't want it to be too far over to the side. And we're gonna make them look like they're more looking at each other with our highlight placement. These are so cute. And with with tiny little pieces like this, I like to use the pointy end of my embellishment wand to add my glue, just so I don't have to worry about it spilling out. So I added the highlights kind of so that the bigger highlight is facing the other waffle, and I think that helps them look like they're looking at each other. But this card just came out so sweet, and I love it so much. I hope that you're having a great day, and I'll see you back here soon. Until next time, happy crafting.